Fantasy football family, what's going on? We're back with another week of Off the Line Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Eugene. You can find me on Twitter at Fantasy Genes, Genes. You can also find our official Twitter handle at Off the Line FF. We're here, it's championship week. Hopefully, you made it to this point. I have two teams out of my 17 that have made it to this point.
Same here, man. Same here.
COVID has done a number. So if you made it to this point of the season, then salute, because it's not easy. So hopefully we touch on like important players for this last week of the season in order to hopefully win some fantasy matchups and some championships, some championship belts, some rings, trophies, whatever the case may be for your league. So
some moolah.
Yeah, to the other host of the show, Ike, what's going on? How you doing? How you feeling this week?
Well, I've been better. I can be found on Twitter at just_Ike09. Yeah, I've been better. Like you said, 17 teams, only 2 championship teams. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I'll take it. COVID kind of ravaged a lot of people, this season, and it's been a pretty chaotic year for the most part. So, 2 out of 17. Hopefully, I can cash in on those 2 and have some championship glory. To kind of celebrate.
Yeah.
But before we dive into all that, we did get some news earlier. Just maybe like an hour ago that the legend John Madden passed away. R.I.P. John Madden. It's it's a real sad day for football fans all across the world, and those of you that grew up playing Madden. I mean, that kind of shaped your childhood, right? I mean, it kind of shaped shaped how you grew up and playing video games with your friends, and Madden was usually at the very forefront of it. So this is a pretty kind of sad day for football fans everywhere, and just kind of the impact that he had across the NFL for so many years. It's just it was immense, and he'll be missed.
Yeah, he will, man. Like you said, he did shape. I mean, he shaped our childhoods. I remember them early 90s. You're playing Madden 92, 93 on Super NES, and you're just like trying to relive those moments outside. I still remember his voice when he used to do commentating like a bunch of the Cowboys games.
Yeah.
So it's just the Madden game will live on, live on his legacy or whatnot, but he's definitely going to be a voice and a figure to be missed in the NFL.
Yeah, even throughout college, just one question that you would always ask your homeboys: "Hey, when we get on the sticks? When we get on the Madden?"
Yep.
That was like one thing that was just with regularity. You just ask your homies, when you're gonna get on the sticks, and you deemed yourself the Madden king because you used to whoop ass all the time. That was me, by the way. I was the Madden king in college. Ask about me. Ask about me. But yeah, man, it's we want to just do whatever we can to kind of celebrate his legacy and honor him. He'll be missed, man. He'll be missed.
Which was kind of crazy because Fox did the little documentary before the games today. I didn't catch it, but I definitely need to watch it. It was just perfect timing when that documentary came out. So
yeah, it was like what, last week?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but just kind of switching gears to kind of dive into a lot of the fantasy takeaways that we have. I'd be remiss if I didn't start the show with our Cowboys whooping that ass, the Washington football team, and their heated benches, 56-14, and our offense, we're on all cylinders. We called this last week. We were on shout out to Kawuman Jones. We were on their show last week. We called this this air show that was going to take place in Dallas on Sunday night because it just felt like the ultimate get right spot, and Washington was kind of limping in. They were on a short week, and Dak and the Cowboys passing attack was just clicking on all cylinders. He had 322 yards and 4 touchdowns in the first half. he would have been on pace for more than Joe Burrow's 525.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
took our foot off the gas. And we'll get to Joe Burrow here later on. But yeah, Amari Cooper was in the media earlier this week saying, "Hey, I'm frustrated. We're not calling the same plays we were calling earlier in the season, and we're kind of being a little too conservative." So that was obviously the squeaky wheel game coming, and a lot of us kind of saw that coming. And he had 7 catches, 84 yards, and a touchdown. That his touchdown was right before the half. And Dalton Schultz also had a good game, 8 catches for 82 yards and a touchdown on his end. So the Cowboys offense, they're back. They just needed to return home. They just played three straight road games, so it's tough to A, play on the road, and B, win on the road. And we actually won both all 3 games on the road by combined 32 points. So that's tough to do in the NFL, no matter how you slice it. All wins aren't going to be pretty. You can't win the same way every single week. And most people have to, just kind of understand that. But the Cowboys offense, they're back. And speaking of someone who came back, Thursday night, we had a game for the 49ers and Titans. AJ Brown returned to the lineup for the Titans and just absolutely went ape shit. He actually buried me in one league. He had 11 catches on 16 targets for 145 yards and a touchdown, just shy of a 52% target share. Ryan Tannehill missed him so much that he targeted him over 50% of the time.
Yeah.
This past week. So that was at 16 targets. That was the highest target share of week 16. And no matter who was on him, he was just a man amongst boys. He just didn't care who was on him. Obviously, he burnt Josh Norman. Josh Norman's been getting torched all season long.
Yeah.
And then the other corner, I think I'm not sure what his name was. I think it was the same corner that Russell Gage mossed a couple of weeks ago. He got that work too. It didn't matter. It didn't matter who was on AJ Brown. He was just going to do his thing. And welcome back. And this is a lesson to a lot of fantasy owners. If your studs are in the lineup, if your studs are returning, start them. I know that the peripherals earlier in the middle part of the season weren't looking as good. He had been struggling. He had kind of been battling injuries, but there was a stretch earlier in the season where he was balling out. He had a game against the Colts where he just dominated. I mean, he was pretty much 2020 AJ Brown or 2019 AJ Brown in the early part of the season. So yeah, again, start your studs, when he's in the game. And another stud that you should also start, no questions asked, is Davante Adams for the Packers. Come on, what else can we say about this guy? I mean, it's just automatic with Aaron Rodgers. Another 10 catches, another 114 yards, another 2 touchdowns, 38% target share, and 54% of the air yards. I mean, this guy is he just continues to light it up. And if Cooper Kupp didn't exist, this guy would be the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy. He's tied for second in red zone TDs with 9, with Diggs and Adam Thielen. And in that game, it was a pretty weird game. Aaron Rodgers only threw for 202 yards, and Davante Adams had 114 of them. So over 58% nearly 58% of the yards went to Davante Adams. It was just kind of a weird game for the Packers. Their offense wasn't moving at the same clip as they normally would. But hey, as long as Aaron and Davante Adams are eating for your fantasy teams, hopefully they got you to the championship game. Aaron Rodgers wasn't able to get me to the championship game, but I'm sure whoever had Davante Adams, I'm sure it propels you to the championship game.
Yeah. Like you said, that was a weird second half. Like they just we're good, we're done. It was weird. But to talk about another wide receiver, death taxes and Cooper Kupp going 10 for over 100 yards once again.
Unfair.
He went 10 for 109. This past week versus Minnesota. Right now, he is 17 receptions away from breaking Michael Thomas's record of 149 receptions. And then he's also 231 yards away from breaking Calvin Johnson's record for the most yards in a season, which he would need about 116 per game, which is basically his average for the season currently. So
yeah, that's a season average.
Right now, he's at 132 yards, 132 receptions for 1,734 yards and 14 touchdowns. I mean, it's just amazing what he's doing in the midst of Stafford struggling late in the season. But
Oh
what's
man, don't
new?
get me
What's
started on
new?
Stafford.
Yeah, what's new with him? It's going to be interesting if you want to start him next week. But we'll touch on that in a moment.
Yep.
Now to our, your another week of your waiver wire running backs hidden for potential teams trying to make it to the championship round. First off, with Justin Jackson. If you saw Austin Eckler last week, he posted on Twitter a clip when he was on Yahoo Fantasy saying like, "Hey, I'm out. You better start Justin Jackson." And look what happened. Justin Jackson started and he went 11 for 64 and 2 rushing touchdowns, and then another 8 for 98 receiving, which led him to RB1 overall this week, which was crazy for
Eckler be
anybody that
knowing.
played him.
If anybody knows fantasy, and it's Austin Eckler. So yeah,
Yeah, he
hope you
definitely
listen.
showed. He definitely shows love to the fantasy community. He dropped a gem this week versus Houston, but I mean, it wasn't. I mean, we even said last week that you should start whoever's going to play running back versus Houston. Um, but another running back in that same game, oddly enough, Rex Burkhead, the Plano, Texas legend. This dude showed up out of nowhere and he led all running backs this past week with 149 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, which led him to an RB3 overall this past week. He crushed me in a league that I was trying to make it to the championship round, which is really wild. Like, it was just weird. I know the Chargers have been, as of late, been better on the run defense, but they could not stop this dude at all. Like anytime
They
they
turned
needed,
back. They turned back into a pumpkin.
yeah, anytime that the Texans needed a first down, this dude was able to do that in some. So,
And even
you
Davis
know,
Mills was going
hey,
going hard on him.
and like I said on that podcast we were on, Coonham and Jones, I
Yeah.
mentioned that he was my sleeper because every home game he's pretty much averaged 20 fantasy points, and he hit that number again.
Oh, he hit 20. Was it exactly 20? I think it was like maybe
No,
like
I think it's
22
like,
or something.
yeah, I think it was like, it depends on what scoring system you're in. He was in between 19 to 21, 22. So
Okay. Yeah.
he did work, man. Like, it just, I don't know. Um, Another running back, waiver wire running back, if you picked him a few weeks ago when we mentioned about picking up handcuffs when we started when you started your playoff run, was Sony Michel. Clearly he is now the lead back. Even when before Henderson got hurt, I think
Yeah.
Sony Michel had the first 20 or 21 carries of the game
Yep.
for the Rams. So now that Henderson's on IR, now you got your running back one of your running backs for your championship lineup. We do know that Akers is. We are hearing that he's potentially going to be able to suit up
Which
this
would be
week, but
absolutely remarkable.
yeah,
Remarkable.
which is crazy for somebody that tore up their Achilles before the season started. But here we are. But I would fully trust Sony Michel regardless of the fact for this week.
Yeah, and speaking of guys you cannot trust, let's switching gears to people that you can't trust. Can't trust anybody that catches passes in Denver. Drew Lock started in place of Teddy Bridgewater this week, and he was terrible. Only 153 yards passing. I mean, he has Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, Noah Fant, all those guys, talented weapons, and it's legitimately inexcusable to have all those weapons and not be able to produce anything.
Trash.
If you have any of those guys in your lineups in championship week, if you somehow started them last week and made it to the championship, that's remarkable. But if you have them, please bench them. Don't even think about starting them. Doesn't matter who the matchup is. I think they play the Chargers this week
The
anyways.
Chargers, yeah.
I think the Chargers will be looking to bounce back in after getting embarrassed by the Texans. So you don't want to start any of those guys, especially if whoever's at quarterback don't want to start. I mean, I love Cortland Sutton, his talent. I love Jerry Jeudy's talent. Tim Patrick is solid. I've been a Noah Fant truther since he came out, but those guys are not fantasy relevant for Week 17 and for your championship round. So get those guys out of your lineup ASAP. And speaking of another set of weapons to keep out of your lineups, anybody that catches passes from Baker Mayfield, keep them out of your lineup as well. Baker Mayfield, another terrible game against Green Bay on Christmas Day, just gifting the Packers about four interceptions.
And the Packers were begging the Browns to win that game, man. Like, it just kept giving the ball. Yeah, let me not continue.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh my God. It's obvious. Like, you can't trust anybody in that passing game, and Baker's holding Cleveland back in more ways than one. Like, it's just it's so terrible to watch. And what's crazy about that game is that the Browns had a lot of success running the ball. Like, they ran for over 200 yards on 20 plus carries and over 6 yards a carry. And the offensive coordinator decided, you know what, let's let Baker drop back 36 times. Let's pass. And I'm in favor of passing over running, but especially with a quarterback that as turnover prone as Baker Mayfield, you don't want to put the ball in his hands that often. And since he's come in the league, he leads the NFL in interceptions with 54. So it's just it's something that they need a quarterback in the worst way. And I saw a report earlier today that they said they're going to bring in competition. Well, I saw a rumor the other day that said they're going to bring in competition for him in 2022. Whatever the hell that means.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't know whatever the hell specific. That means. Yeah, exactly. It is anybody's guess, but that's going to be a very interesting offseason for that organization, deciding what they want to do with Baker Mayfield, because that's
that definitely sounds like, hey, we're not going to lock you down for this long contract you were looking for. We'll pick up your option, and you're just gonna have to win us over, basically.
Yeah, they picked up his option. I think he's getting paid. He'll be getting paid $18.8 million for his 5th year option. So that's not a ton of money for a starting quarterback. So maybe they give him one more year. Who knows? But we most people who have eyes know that he's not it. He's not the guy, and they have to find a way to move on or upgrade the quarterback position and get some more weapons. I mean, the weapons haven't been there since OBJ left. So what's funny is that Ian Hartitz on Twitter, PFF Ian Hartitz, he always keeps this tally of touchdowns since OBJ left. OBJ has 4 touchdowns, and Baker Mayfield's wide receivers have 3, which is hilarious to me because man, they deemed OBJ the problem there in Cleveland, but he's clearly not. It's one guy that's holding them back. So. We can spend all day on Baker Mayfield and how terrible he is, but switching gears to a team that was not terrible. Let's not switch gears. Let's keep the theme of terrible going on. The Ravens defense. The Ravens defense this past Sunday was absolutely terrible. They were just getting shredded, left, right, up and down by the Cincinnati Bengals, and they did whatever they wanted. Joe Burrow had a field day. We'll get to him in a second. But the wide receivers for Cincinnati, I mean, T. Higgins just had a monster game. 12 catches, 194 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Obviously, career highs. Every single catch that he had went for a first down, which is insane. Every single catch. He's been the wide receiver 2 overall in fantasy since week 12, and we've been back and forth whether or not he's the alpha in Cincinnati. Is it MarrChase? Is it T. Higgins? Like, we kind of been bouncing back and forth over the last several weeks. And speaking of MarrChase, he had 7 for 125, so he had a pretty good game. And even Tyler Boyd got in on the action, 3 for 85 and a touchdown on his end. But ultimately, what I believe is that the Cincinnati Bengals, they have 2 top 12 wide receivers. They have two wide receiver ones, and they're both under the age of 23, and they both have 1,000 yards on the season. So it's going to be the Cincinnati Bengals. They have a pretty bright future. From an offense, from a skill player perspective. I mean, Joe Mixon at running back, he had 2 touchdowns as well, and I don't think he's 25 yet. He's 25, maybe he just turned 25. So that offense now. 25 now, yeah. So that offense is pretty young, and they have a lot, a lot of value in keeper leagues and dynasty leagues, for sure. The arrow is
Yep.
pointing up, and speaking of up, the arrow is pointing up on our fantasy MVP of the week, Joe Burrow. Absolutely went ape shit against the against the Ravens. 525 yards passing on 37 completions. 4 touchdowns, and that 525 yards was the 4th highest total in NFL history. And what's funny is that the two that are in front of him were both 529 and 527 yards. So he could have had a couple more yards and been second in NFL history. The NFL record, I think, is 554 yards. So yeah, he was just balling, and that Bengals offense, like they've just been explosive all season long. They now have 19 touchdowns outside of the red zone, which is by far the best in the NFL. So just think about that. Outside of the 20-yard line, that's a lot of their touchdowns come from outside of the 20-yard line. So they're just torching teams.
Yeah.
Whenever they're on, they're one of the best offenses in the league. And Joe Burrow is versus the Ravens this year. He's thrown for over 900 yards and 7 touchdowns. Yeah,
what?
He threw for 400 yards against them in week 7. Remember? He threw
Oh
for
yeah.
over 400. Threw for over 400 against them in week 7 and threw for 525. So he has at least 900 yards in 2 games versus one opponent. I don't know if that's a record. Is that a record? That might be a record. Because that's absurd. Versus one opponent in one season. Like that's
that week 7 game, that was the MarrChase went for 200.
That's
he kept
went for 200.
That was the one I think was it I came in the 2 corners ran into each other, and he he caught the ball and the 2 corners ran into each other, and he took like a 60-70 yard touchdown.
Yeah, it was a slant. It was like 82 yards or something like that.
Yeah, it was something
he
crazy.
routed up Marlon Humphrey on that play too. Like it was it was just, it was press coverage, and then he swiped his hand away and ran a slant and then spun off of him and then took it to the crib. But yeah, 900 plus yards in 2 games against the Ravens this year. Joe Burrow, our fantasy MVP of the week.
Yeah. Moral of the story is, if you had a stack of any one of these players, you probably chilling and waiting to see what happens in your championship week. So salute to you for that. Did you see that Harbaugh was salty when they asked him about them? And you know what's so ironic? Last year they were still running the ball, like purposely trying to get the 100 yards per game. You know how they had that streak?
Yeah, to extend that record.
They were one of the victims of that record that he was trying to extend on purpose instead of kneeling the ball. So it's just funny how that turned around on a.
Yeah, and then they asked Joe Burrow about that. He's like, "Well, I don't have any sympathy for that for them." So yeah, 900 yards in 2 games.
That's a lot. I mean, I think that's more than what Jerry Jeudy has for the season. So, Cortland Sutton, maybe combined.
Both of them combined.
Yeah. All right, now to our fantasy least valuable player of the week. New York Giants, Jake Fromm, 6 of 17, 25 yards, 25 yards throwing. Can you imagine a quarterback? You're on a field
on an
where
NFL
your quarterback
field,
throws 25 yards,
25 American yards on an American
17
football field.
1 pick and a fumble, and then he gets benched. He gets benched for neck Glennon, not Mike, but neck Glennon, and he wasn't much better either. So I mean, there's nothing really else to say. Like, you can't trust anything that's happening, and coming from that organization from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah, it's a carousel of shitty quarterbacks that they've been trotting out all season. Daniel Jones, I mean, we give him shit a lot, but I mean, he's obviously the best of the bunch, and he's shown that he can actually be pretty good in spots. But outside of Daniel Jones, like, man, that is a shit show of an organization,
bruh. And they're already talking about bringing back Joe Judge and Daniel Jones back. So, fantasy perspective, hopefully they they improve on the offensive line, so they can at least give him some more time. You get Saquon to start looking like himself somewhat again. I don't know. It's just going to be interesting trying to evaluate that team for next year for sure.
Yeah, offensive line should be the priority in New York. It
Yeah.
should be the priority.
All right. So to the favorite part of the show, cap or no cap. If anybody that's new that's not familiar with the term cap, cap is another word for lying. So if I was to say cap or no, if I was to say Dak Prescott was not good versus the Washington football team, I would say
that is cap, 100% cap.
Yeah. So hopefully you get understanding what cap means. So let's get into it. So the first statement I have is I am not confident in CPAT in my starting lineup for the championship. Cap or no cap?
Man, that for me. That's no cap, man. They've turned him into a between the tackles grinder, and he doesn't get a lot of passing game work anymore. He hasn't caught more than 3 passes since week 9. And those totals since week 9 have been, week 9, he caught 6 passes. But after that, it's been 1 catch, 2 catches, 3 catches, 2 catches, 2 catches, and 1 catch. It's great that he's a primary ball carrier, over Mike Davis, who's dust. But the lack of passing down work is concerning. And they have Buffalo this week. And they don't yield they barely yield anything. They actually got smashed by Damian Harris this past week.
Yeah.
3 touchdowns. But I don't know. I don't trust Cordarelle Patterson in my lineups, and I'm considering benching him in one of the 2 leagues that I have him in, that I have a championship team in. So I'm not confident in him. So that's no cap.
Yeah. So for me, I also say it's no cap. Since week 9, like you said, like the usage has gone down ever since he came back from the ankle injuries. Like we said, like I don't understand, are they saving him for something? Like there's no playoff run here, so
they're actually not mathematically eliminated. They are still technically they're still in the playoff race, but hey, you never know. There's a log jam at that 7th spot in the NFC right now. It's occupied by the Eagles, but things can change between now and week 18. So
that's true, but this would be the time to unleash
that's true. Yeah.
This would be the time to unleash your weapon. If you need if you're really pushing for this spot, he needs touches, and they're just not doing it. So I don't have him in either one of the championship rosters that I have going. But if I did, I wouldn't be starting them. I don't know what they're doing over there, and I just wouldn't trust it.
Nope.
All right. So to our second and last statement, which should be a little spicy one. And I think it's probably the most important lineup question that most people might have on their rosters if they kept this player on their roster till now. I will start Trey Lance for my championship. Cap or no cap?
Can this be it depends?
We have. Let's
because this one can this can go a multitude of ways. So it just depends. I think this is it depends. So
okay,
if you have these quarterbacks in your lineup, Kyler Murray, Dak, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Matthew Stafford, Russell Wilson, and you can probably add Aaron Rodgers on there because he has the Vikings this week. Are you starting him over any of those guys? I'll answer that. I'll answer first.
Okay.
I'm definitely not starting him over Hurts because that matchup versus quarterbacks is so juicy. That's probably the number 1 matchup on the entire week 17 slate. That has to be number 1 versus Washington. Kyler and Dak. We just saw Dak torch Washington, and he's going to be at home. Kyler Murray, he's been up and down over the last several weeks. Arizona, I think they've lost 3 straight games. So they were 10-2, now they're 10-5, and Kyler hasn't looked particularly great in any of those games. I probably wouldn't bench Kyler Murray, because again, you saw him on Saturday night when he broke off that 60-yard run. So
Yeah.
he's capable of that rushing upside. You can't bench that. Justin Herbert, we've seen him ball out. I think the last time they played Denver, they struggled. Um, I still wouldn't start I still wouldn't start Trey Lance over Justin Herbert, only because now, given the new COVID rules, we're gonna, Mike Williams and I think Jalen Guyton
Jalen Guyton.
maybe be eligible this weekend, because the unvaccinated individuals, their window went from 10 days to 5 days, so it may clear them for this Sunday against Denver, and they may have all the weapons back, and they're going to be playing at home, where Justin Herbert plays pretty well at home. So, and then Joe Burrow, we just saw what he did against, and then now, Kansas City's defense has been pretty damn good over the last month. So, but I don't see them containing Joe Burrow. So, and then Matthew Stafford has the Ravens, depleted secondary, and Russell Wilson has Detroit, and Detroit obviously yields a lot, and then Aaron Rodgers has Minnesota. So those guys, I'm not starting Trey Lance over. But if you were to make a case about it, anyone else outside of that tier, outside of that range, I probably would think of starting Trey Lance. In his lone start this year, he had 16 carries for 89 yards. So they used him as pretty much a running back / quarterback in that game against Arizona. 16 fantasy points. But the previous game, he took over for an injured Jimmy Garoppolo and had 22 fantasy points and a half. Finished 9 of 18 for 157 yards and 2 touchdowns, and then had another 7 carries for 41 yards. So we know Trey Lance. I mean, he has upside, and he's a rookie, so he's going to be playing with his hair on fire, wanting to make the big play. So I wouldn't start him over any of these guys that we just mentioned. But outside of that, I would consider starting him in my championship. And he gets the Houston Texans. So
Yeah. Damn. Yeah. Now that I look at it, it is kind of a depend. So I think for me, if I want to say over Herbert, almost if he can get Williams back, then I think I would lean Herbert to start over Lance.
yeah.
I think I want to say I want to start Lance over Kyler, only because Kyler, like, pretty much since he's been back from injury, he hasn't been good, like fantasy wise, even real life wise, he hasn't really been good, in my opinion.
Yeah.
His matchup, Lance's matchup is better than Kyler's. Dak, I would probably start Dak because, like we said, when Dak is at home, he's 20 plus easy. And then Arizona secondary is kind of depleted with injuries and COVID, but we'll see what happens when they get closer to the game.
Yeah.
Definitely not starting him over Hurts. Hurts is probably
That's probably the number one
QB1
matchup.
versus and we saw what he did
2 weeks ago. Or hell, last Tuesday, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, he went for a 30 burger versus them. So nah.
Yeah.
Burrow.
You don't want to chase the 525 passing yards, because we know that's not repeatable.
And they're on the road too.
Are they in Kansas City?
Yeah, I believe they're in Kansas City. No, they're at home. You're right. They're at home versus Kansas City.
Okay.
KC's defense has been really good since since that Dallas game. That's a long stretch.
Even before the Dallas game, I think they've had a long stretch of just playing solid ball on defense.
Yeah.
The only game that they kind of slipped up in was against the Chargers, but that's Herbert.
Yeah.
Herbert's a stud. So, but yeah,
and then also Herbert, pretty much every home game he's had at least over 20. So, man, I guess you want to. I'll stay Burrow there. Stafford, I know he's playing against depleted Ravens secondary, but he hasn't been good.
Yeah, he's been struggling. I mean, I think if you were to, now that I think about it, maybe you would start Trey over Stafford because of the rushing upside, and obviously Stafford doesn't provide that, and he's going to be on the road as well. Stafford will be, even though the Ravens are kind of depleted. I don't know. I don't know if you can trust. I mean, Stafford almost screwed me. Actually, he did screw me in one league for being
Mm,
so terrible. Um, I don't know, man. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. It just
yeah,
depends on
and
who you're going to start them over. If any of these
yeah,
guys here, the vast majority of them you wouldn't start. There's a
yeah,
couple of them that you can make a case for. Make a case for starting Lance over, but at least for my money, I don't think I would start any of these. Start
yeah. It's tough when you got a whole bunch of money on the line too, man. And
yeah,
Lance has a juicy matchup. Sheesh.
yeah.
Yeah, this. Oh, I think I would start him. I'll start him over Russ though. I feel like I would start him over Russ just
Russ at
because.
home versus Detroit.
Ooh,
I know.
Detroit is, and what's crazy, Detroit's defense has been a little bit better, man.
Yeah,
Like,
they've been decent. They've been decent.
yeah, now that I think about it, I think I probably go Russ. Damn, yeah. So probably I go over. The only one that I was actually confident in starting him over was Kyler. Everybody else I was like really struggling with, and
Yeah,
even starting him over Kyler, just like you feel kind of dirty. But I mean, it's Houston, so.
yeah.
But yeah, that ends cap and no cap. That's definitely, I know a lot of people are going to be juggling with that particular question. So I wish we were, hopefully, we're able to touch on a couple of your quarterbacks you might have been debating on. But at the end of the day, it's going to be your decision in terms of how comfortable you're going to feel Lance over whoever that you have in that starting spot for your quarterback.
Yeah.
Um, Now, waiver wire pickups. This is also pretty much this is the last week of the season, so you just need something to hit. If you
So
go ahead,
yeah, yeah. If you're picking up any of these guys, you're probably going to start them.
start them. Yeah,
There's no I'll pick them up and wait and see what's going to happen. No, like this is do or die. This is the final week. So if you're going to pick up any of these guys, you're more than likely going to start them. So
or
just keep
you could be picking up for gamesmanship also, but
or
generally,
that to maybe block your opponent from starting them against
yeah,
you.
yeah,
So that could be another reason. But for the most part, yeah, you're these guys are going to be promptly inserted in your lineups based on some factors that can may unfold throughout the week, but which we'll touch on here in a second.
yeah. So starting with quarterbacks, my first one is if this is only if Lamar cannot go. I would go back to Tyler Huntley if he's ready and available. We saw when he's been playing that he's done some good work. The Rams defense is a defense that's a little tough, but I mean they can definitely be had for yards. So um, that's one quarterback I'll look at, and obviously the second one would be Trey Lance. He's in a prime spot versus Houston at home. Um, I mean, as you heard, the only start that he had 89 rush yards. That's pretty much 2 touchdowns. If you play in a 4-point touchdown league, so I mean, I mean, it goes without even saying. Like, if you're in a bind at quarterback, I would definitely pick him up.
Yep. Yeah, and just real quick on running backs, Rex Burkhead just had a hell of a game against the Chargers. David Johnson he was out due to being on the COVID list. We're not sure of his availability this week. He may be cleared, but if he's not, even if he is, I think you should still pick up Rex Burkhead because he should be in for a large snap share. Again, he just had 22 carries, 149 yards, and 2 touchdowns in the last game. He's for as tumultuous a season as Houston has had, he's been a pretty good bright spot for them. As Gene said earlier in the show, Plano, Texas finest. So I think Rex Burkhead will be a good pickup. Daryl Williams for the Kansas City Chiefs, running back. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is week to week with an injury. And while he was injured earlier in the season, Daryl Williams did average about 18 fantasy points per game while he was sidelined. So if you somehow kept Daryl Williams, pat yourself on the back. If you dropped him, try to go pick him back up. So yeah, and then potentially we could look at picking up Cam Akers. I don't know if you would necessarily start him though, or if you're feeling froggy, if you think he's going to return back to form almost immediately. With Darrell Henderson on IR, Sean McVay did say he was going to play this week, or he might play this week. We'll see how practice goes. We'll see how the practice reports unfold throughout the week. But Cam Akers getting back this quickly from that Achilles injury, it's just a testament to how strong and how advanced modern medicine is, because that
Crazy.
is crazy. He tore
Crazy.
his Achilles in July, and usually Achilles injuries are worse than ACL injuries. They've been deemed in the past as death sentences for players, especially skilled players. They're not going to get back to the same level of production that they were, but we're seeing more and more players with Achilles injuries return back to form and get back to their elite status. So Cam Akers, if he's on there, if he's on the waiver wire, I would pick him up and see what Sean McVay says throughout the week and see if he practices extensively. And there were some rumors stating that he may start, which I don't know. I think that would be that'd be a little much for me, but yeah, I would pick up Cam Akers.
Definitely. And then what another running back group would be the Jordan Howard, Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell. I think really, I think Jordan Howard would be the priority because when Sanders got hurt, Howard immediately got pretty much all the touches till he got hurt, all the rushing work until he got hurt. Then it was Boston Scott. So if Jordan Howard is available to play, getting past the stinger that he had during the last week, then I would put priority to him and then Boston Scott, and then if Jordan Howard is not available, then I would pick up Kenneth Gainwell because he's going to be the passing down back for sure.
You know what's crazy about that backfield is Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, Jordan Howard, and Kenny Gainwell. The only player that has not scored a touchdown this year is Miles Sanders in that backfield. And it just pisses me off because I had a lot of Miles Sanders this season. I somehow drafted him. I wasn't going out of my way to draft him, but he would just fall to me in almost every draft that I was in, every redraft league that I was in. He would just fall to me. I'm like, oh shit, Miles Sanders, he's my third running back. Man, if he smashes, oh man, look out. I was telling a couple of my best friends, hey, look, I got Miles Sanders in this round, and to add to these running backs, look out. Yeah, about that. about that. That was like a little bit of a rant that I wanted to get off my chest.
And then one, I guess, sneaky running back would be Derek Gore, the direct backup to Daryl Williams. I know he did a lot of work versus Pittsburgh, but that was in a blowout. But when the games that CH was out, Derek Gore was the backup to Daryl Williams, and he was getting touches at the same time that Daryl Williams was. So if you're really, really in a bind, then he could potentially be somebody that you can put on your, at least put on your roster. But I wouldn't be eager to put him in your lineup, but for sure that wouldn't be a bad pickup if you're really, really in a pinch.
Yeah. Yeah, and just real quick on wide receivers, Isaiah McKenzie for the Bills. He just came off a pretty good game. Cole Beasley and Gabriel Davis were on the COVID list this past week, and they were unvaccinated. And prior to today, they had to be on the list for 10 days, but that changed in light of the new CDC guidance. So that went from 10 days to 5 days. So both of them may be clear by the time Sunday rolls around. So I would just kind of keep an eye on that. But if they're not cleared in some way, shape, or form, I would still go out and pick up Isaiah McKenzie. He's done well over the last couple of years in spot starts. Over the last two games that Cole Beasley has missed, because he'd be Cole Beasley's direct replacement in the slot. He's had 17 catches, 190 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So, and he just came off a pretty good game this past week. I think he had over 11. I think he had 11 catches, over 100 yards, and a touchdown. So, Yeah, I would go to pick up Isaiah McKenzie, and then also Josh Palmer for the Los Angeles Chargers. We talked about Mike Williams earlier in the show. He initially, I mean, he technically still is out for Week 17, but again, due to that new guidance for unvaccinated players being out for 10 days, it reduced to 5 days. He may be cleared, but if not, Josh Palmer, he ran the most routes and had the most snaps of any Chargers wide receiver last week. And he had 5 catches for 43 yards and a touchdown. So he'll be a pretty good flex play if you're in a pinch and if you really need points for your championships.
Yeah, and then real quick on tight ends, I have two. One is Gerald Everett. We saw him last week versus Chicago, go 4 for 69 and 1 touchdown, which gave him a tight end 4 for last week. He gets to play Detroit this coming week. Detroit is middle of the pack in terms of fantasy points given to the tight end position. So that could be somebody if you need that spot filled. The last one is Cole Kmet, tight end for the Chicago Bears. Also in that same game versus Seattle, he went 4 for 49. He played 96% of the snaps, and ran a route on 85% of those snaps. So he's definitely getting a lot of usage. A lot of potential opportunity. So that's another tight end if you're in a pinch that you could look to add. All right, now to matchups to attack, aka barbecue chicken. Barbecue chicken, that was a coin line from Shaq on Inside the NBA. Whenever somebody's lined up on a matchup to kill, he used to just say barbecue chicken alert. Go get whatever you want. Go get everything you need from that person because they ain't stopping you.
Yep, pretty much. Mama's cooking, baby. Mama's cooking.
Yep, and we just had Christmas dinner, so
get some leftovers while you at it.
Yeah. All right. So my first one was Ronald Jones versus the Jets. Like we've said since we started this pod, Jets is always on fade mode. You always attack anybody that's anybody with 2 legs. You just start versus the Jets almost. The Jets have allowed the most fantasy points per game to the running back position,
except if you're the Jags.
Yeah, except if you're the Jags
or the Texans.
Those two, I don't know what they're doing. But 2 weeks ago, you saw Duke Johnson go for a career high. So I think we're confident Ronald Jones doing the same thing or something nasty to them. So in terms of, I mean, they need the game anyway because they're still fighting for that number 1 spot in the NFC. And my second one is Jalen Hurts versus the Washington football team. Like we said 2 weeks ago, he put up almost 300 passing yards and 3 total touchdowns versus this team. Washington also allows the most fantasy points to the quarterback position. You just saw what Dak did to them in 1 half. So, we just told you what Jalen did versus them 2 weeks ago. So, fire up Jalen Hurts everywhere you have him.
Yeah, and then Dak had the Washington defense fighting each other on the sidelines. So who knows what version of the Washington defense you're going to get this week. So a couple of matchups that I have. This is probably one of the more obvious ones. Jonathan Taylor versus the Raiders. He went 20 for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns against Las Vegas last year, and now Vegas is missing 3 linebackers. And on the season, Las Vegas is the 3rd most advantageous matchup for opposing running backs. So don't really need to spell this out for you. Jonathan Taylor is going to smash on the Raiders. I would take all the overs for Jonathan Taylor this week. If the over is like 115, I would smash the over. I would even do an alternate line for like 130, 135 if it gets that high. I think he's going to have a hell of a game. And plus, we just got news that Carson Wentz has been added to the COVID list. But he may play given the new guidelines now that reduced the the period from 10 to 5 days. But even then, like he would just be handing the ball off to Jonathan Taylor anyways. Whoever's going to be playing quarterback for the Colts this week is just going to hand the ball off to Jonathan Taylor and just let him smash behind that offensive line. And finally, we have the Buffalo Bills wide receivers, Stephon Diggs, and whoever the number two will be, based on what happens with Beasley and Gabriel Davis versus the Falcons. The Falcons are the third best matchup for wide receivers, or the third most advantageous matchup for wide receivers. And we've seen, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and that passing offense kind of step it up over the last couple of weeks. So I like that matchup in particular.
All right, now to player props. We get lines from Prize Picks over here in the state of Texas. We do not have a legal sports book, so this is how we get our picks, is using Prize Picks, and then you can use Prize Picks as just another tool that you can use in terms of leveraging projections for your particular players that you have on your rosters, and for DFS purposes. I know last week we went 1-for-1 because our J-Rob pick got robbed when he tore his Achilles, but the Herbert was a easy over
Yep.
270 versus Houston. So now to on our picks. My first one is Zach Wilson under 205 passing yards versus the Bucks. I basically picked this because he doesn't have anyone to really throw to. He's the last 2 weeks he's been sacked the second most with seven sacks. So their line is going to struggle to stop Tampa Bay's pass rush. Even the past 2 games, Zach Wilson only has a total of 272 passing yards. So I'm not sure how he's going to get over 205 for this game. And then the Bucks pass DVOA is 4th in the league. So that's my take on that. My second one in the same game, we got Antonio Brown over 75 and a half receiving yards versus the Jets. Like we said before, if they the Jets last week in his first game back after injury and his suspension, the fake vaccine card, he goes 10 he goes 10 for 101 on 12 targets. It's almost like he was never gone. Like anytime that they need a first down, it was like the connection never ended. Like he was just there open.
Yeah.
So
he was routing up Stephon Gilmore.
Yeah.
And he actually had to leave the game due to a groin injury in the third quarter.
Yeah,
So
he was getting worked.
Yeah.
And this was with him playing like cushion coverage too. He was getting routed up. So
yeah, he had that man on skates.
Yeah,
had him in a blender.
So I wouldn't hesitate to play this number for Antonio Brown.
Yeah. And the last to round out mine, so I have Darnell Mooney over 49.5 receiving yards versus the Giants. This is the Bears wide receiver. He's hit the over in four out of his last 6 games, and he's seen at least 7 targets in 5 out of the last 6 games. The Giants are, they're in the middle of the pack defending the pass, but there are still opportunities there for Darnell Mooney. He is the number 1 receiver, and the Giants can give up a couple of big plays here and there. Devonta Smith last week had 5 catches for 80 yards. So there's opportunities for Darnell Mooney to go well over this number, as he's a pretty explosive receiver. He's their number 1 and their deep threat. So 49.5 seems kind of low to me. That's just me, but I see this as a pretty good prop to hit. And then finally, we have Dallas Goddard over 50.5 receiving yards versus the Washington football team. He's hit the over in the 3 out of the last 5 games. And he's seen at least 6 targets in those games. And, just last Tuesday, he smashed Washington for 7 catches, 135 yards. And this defense hasn't gotten much better over the last week, as we've seen. We just saw them get smashed by Dalton Schultz on Sunday night. They've had their struggles, and I think Dallas Goddard continues to add to those struggles for them. So 50.5 for Dallas Goddard versus Washington.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna put in some of these after we get off of here, because I
feel like the lines are gonna go up.
Yeah. These are too good. But we at the end of the show. We're at the end of the season, man. Like, this is it.
Do or die, man. Do or die.
Yeah. I feel good about the 2 teams that I have left, for sure. But I can't control what happens with COVID. So
I just need to figure out what I'm gonna do with CPAT because I have options in that league. I have Aaron Jones, I have DeAndre Swift, who should be back this week. Sony Michel in that league as well. I'm trying to think of what other running backs I have, but my team is kind of stacked. I just have to make sure that I make the right choice. But CPAT, I don't feel good about him.
Yeah. This has been, I know this fantasy season has been I know overall it's been interesting because of the amount of COVID hits we've had, but it's been exciting as usual. It's fantasy, the grind, the shit talking, like all that. I just, it's gonna be missed for sure. But next week I know we're gonna do a recap show. Just talking about the hits or misses, MVPs or whatnot. So it'll be a good time listening into us, going through that, and hopefully you can relate to some of the things that we talk about as we
we may have some
relive the season.
Yeah, we may have some grievances to air as well. So,
just
certain things that took place throughout the season that we just weren't a fan of, or certain things that happened to our squads that you're like, what the hell, and things of that nature. So, yeah, there's a bunch that we have planned for next week's show in that regard.
Yeah. You got anything else before we get up out of here?
I sure as hell do. I have a little bit of a rant that I need to go on for really quick. So there is a unspoken but often spoken rule in fantasy football where if you're not in the playoffs, stay off the waiver wire. Stay off the waiver wire. AKA shut the fuck up when grown folks are talking. That's the best way that I can put that situation. I had a situation happen in one of my leagues where an owner that just got knocked out of the playoffs, he was kind of bitter about being knocked out of the playoffs. He decided to get some attention, right, and try to pick up some players that a certain owner was targeting on the waiver wire due to his COVID issues, and he held on to them a little bit longer than he should have, and dropped them to the point where he wasn't able to pick them up. But that's that may or may not be my co-host that's laughing right now. But he shall remain nameless. But just really quick on that rant. If it's not a dynasty league, if it's not a keeper league, if there's not a prize for third place, if there's not a punishment for last place, if there's not an incentive to play for the number one pick, if there is not a weekly prize payout, you should not be picking up players on the waiver wire. Point blank period. These, especially this close to the championship week, these teams that are still in the playoffs are playing for a lot more than you right now, right? I mean, if you're eliminated, just delete the app. Hide that team. Don't even look at sleeper until August, right? But yeah, it's just one of those things where it'll just get in the way of somebody potentially making some money in the league, or winning a prize, or some way, shape, or form, just kind of ruining their experience for them. I think it's a kind of like a bush league practice that a lot of people need to stop. So if you're doing this in your league, don't be that person, right? Don't be that person that picks up players just for the hell of picking them up. Miss me with the whole, I play until the end, I'm going to pick up players, this, that, and the other. Nobody cares about that shit, okay? Like, yeah, if you're going to play until the end, join a league that does that, right? If you're joining a certain league that doesn't play until the end, that if you're eliminated, your season's over, then just stop. All right, just stop. We get you love fantasy, we understand. I love fantasy. But it may be hard for you to not pick up players, or you may get in the mode of picking up players, but just stop that. All right. But that's essentially it. Be better people. Don't do what this individual did this past weekend. And yeah, that's all I got. Follow the show, Off the Line FF. Follow me at just_IGO9, and follow Gene at Fantasy Jeans. Anything else, Gene?
No, you're right. It is a buffoon play I know I've always been a proponent of this. I just, I wasn't thinking, and then,
Oh wait, it
somebody.
was you? I was
Yes,
talking
it
about
was
you?
me. Yes, I will own up to it. It was me.
Oh,
It was a
wow.
mistake. It was a mistake I shouldn't have done. Um, but
Full
yeah,
full disclosure, people, I got my ass kicked in that league, so it didn't really matter that
yeah,
he blocked me from picking up these players, but it's just the principle and
yeah, it's the
just the
principle.
intent, right?
Yeah,
That I had a gripe on. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. I got my ass
yeah,
kicked.
yeah.
Yeah.
You did, but yes, I shouldn't have picked up the players. But I feel like I did it so we could use this as actually some good content. But
Well,
no, you
that's
shouldn't. You shouldn't. You
that's
definitely
right.
shouldn't do it. It's definitely bush league. It's rookie level type of stuff. You shouldn't be picking up players when you don't have nothing left to play for. So,
Yeah, and
you
then,
know,
this and we can kind of add on to this, next week when we do our recap show, just certain best practices, for fantasy leagues to kind of that you can kind of take into the offseason as, as lessons, and that you can apply it, to next year whenever you're playing fantasy. So, this is just kind of one thing that we just kind of want to get out there and make sure that people understand that, this is a no-no, right? For lack of a better term.
that's true. But like you said, you can follow us on Off the Line FF on Twitter. You can find us on YouTube. Just search Off the Line Fantasy Football. You can find us on all streaming platforms. Just search Destination Devi. Hopefully when we get back next week, we can hear about some of these championships that you won, people. So, until then, good luck, be safe. Let's go win something.
Let's get these rings.